All right. We're going to give it a few more minutes for people to trickle in. All right, we're at 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure more people are going to trickle in as they tend to do on a Wednesday evening. My name is Rachel. I'm the host of this speaker series, Designed for Aging, Dying, and Dignity. This is the last one of this series, and I'm really excited about it. A little bit of housekeeping for those who are attending via Zoom. If you have any questions at all as the presentation goes on, feel free to pop them in either the chat or the Q&A. I'll be monitoring both of them. And then when Nora's done with her presentation, I'll ask those questions. Or you can save them to the end, pop them in, but please do ask questions. If you're on Facebook, same thing, you can type them in the chat or in the comment box, and I'll ask them for you. I can't believe this is the last one. This is also my last one as I'm moving on from Yes Tomorrow, and I'm really happy to be able to host this and be able to feature such incredible people doing incredible work in the world, especially around this topic. So thank you all for tuning in with me during this series and the past few series that I've done. And I will go ahead and introduce our speaker for the evening. So the topic of the evening is Building Hope, Building Careers, Aging in Place as a Foundation for Women's Workforce Development. And our speaker is Nora Spencer. Nora Spencer is the first, I'm sorry, there we go. I was looking at the wrong thing. Nora Spencer spent the first 15 years of her career in human resources and recruiting at Fortune 500 companies, but changed directions and graduated in 2017 from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a master's in social work. A self-taught tradeswoman, Nora envisioned a training program that would empower underemployed women to make inroads into the construction trades where they could earn living wages on a sustainable career path. After becoming familiar with the concept of aging in place, she recognized the opportunity for these women to practice their newfound skills while carrying out needed repairs and renovations for older adults in the community. And thus the model for Hope Renovations was born. Nora is a North Carolina licensed building contractor. She also holds a BA in journalism and mass communication from UNC, a senior professional in human resources designation, and is a certified aging in place specialist. Nora lives in Chapel Hill with her husband, Brian, her cats, Lucky and Lola, and her dog, Daisy. So Nora is going to share with us a little bit about Hope Renovations, which is located in Carver, North Carolina, on the lands of the Shakori, Lumbee, Eno, and Tuscarora people. I'm tuning in from Yes Tomorrow's campus here in the Mad River Valley of Vermont, which is on Abenaki land. So Nora, thank you so much for being here. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really honored, not just to be here speaking, but to be here for the final talk as part of this series. So I really am very grateful for the invitation. So like Rachel said, I'm going to be sharing some information and really our story, the story of Hope Renovations, how we came about and how we are bringing two very different populations together to do the work that we do. We're bringing together women and we're bringing together older adults to make change in our community. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Rachel, just give me the thumbs up that you can see it. Okay, great. So So yes, we are Hope Renovations. We are located in Carborough, North Carolina. Most people don't know where that is, but if you've ever heard of Chapel Hill, where the University of North Carolina is, it's a sister city to Chapel Hill right next door. We are a fairly new organization. Although I incorporated Hope Renovations as a 501c3 nonprofit in late 2017, we didn't actually get our start until summer of 2020, so just about 16 months ago, right in the middle of a pandemic. So not recommended to start up a nonprofit in the middle of a pandemic, in case you're thinking about it. But we did it, and we're here today. And we've actually, COVID has been interesting for us because the needs that we address have grown so much because of COVID. That has made our work and our mission that much more important, and it has allowed us to grow a lot in the 16 months since we came onto the scene. So let's see. So our mission is to inspire hope in women and older adults for a joyful and fulfilling future. And you can see a picture there of my fantastic team that makes this happen every day. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that because it's a pretty unique model. We are actually the first nonprofit with this model that I'm about to tell you about in the entire country. So we train unemployed and underemployed women for jobs in the construction trades. And we also carry out repairs and renovations and modifications in the community, primarily for older adults and adults who have disabilities, because a lot of times the needs are the same for those two different groups. We are the first standalone women's trades training program in North Carolina, quite unbelievably. And there's not that many in the country. There's less than 10 in the entire country. So, you know, over the years, and especially lately, you've probably seen more and more women on construction job sites, more and more women doing construction work. And right now, there's really not enough training programs that exist to be able to make that happen. So we're really happy to be able to fill that gap. There's also not enough organizations that do work for older adults who are aging in place. So we try to fill that gap as well. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about how we do that. So we think of ourselves as a win-win-win. That's what we always say, because there's really three groups that we bring together in order to create change in the community and work towards social justice for everyone. So underemployed women is, of course, one of the groups. We have a pre-apprenticeship program that I'll tell you more about in a little bit. But that program gives women the basic skills, the core skills that they need to be able to go into entry-level jobs or apprenticeships in the trades. And of course, the trades typically have living wages. So there are great opportunities in the trades. There's an entire gender missing from the trades. That's the problem we're trying to solve. And we're doing that by giving these women those basic skills that they need to be able to move into those careers. Older adults, of course, is the other population that we work with. So like I mentioned, you know, our wonderful crew goes out into the community and they do all types of jobs, primarily for older adults who want to grow old in their homes. It's a segment of the industry that is very fast growing, but does not have enough contractors who are dedicated to that type of work. And it's an opportunity for us to get our trainees their on-the-job experience. So when women are in our training program, they're able to go out onto the job with our construction crews and get their hands dirty and practice those new skills that they've been learning. And finally, of course, the construction employers in the industry. I'm sure that everyone is very familiar. You hear it on the news all the time about the critical worker shortage in the construction trades. For many, many years, the construction trades was kind of considered what you did if you didn't go to college. So, you know, the pinnacle, the ideal was to go to college, get a college education. And if you didn't do that, you could always fall back on the trades. Well, what that narrative did over time was keep people who probably would have been great for the trades, who, you know, could have had a great career in the trades out of this industry, and created a huge gap as baby boomers and that generation is starting to age out, retire from the workforce. There are not enough people doing this work. I think that the average retirement age, I saw this recently for electricians, or the average age of electricians right now, of licensed electricians, is 57, average. So there's not enough young people doing this. There's not enough people moving into these fields. And that's one of the problems that we're trying to address, because fewer workers means higher prices, higher home building prices, higher prices for renovations. And that's not what we want, because we want people to be able to stay in their homes. We want people to be able to afford their homes. So if we can get more people into the industry, we'll be able to help solve that problem as well. So I get a lot of questions about the story of Hope Renovations. I think a lot of times, you know, the feedback I get is people will hear about Hope Renovations and they'll think, gosh, that's a really great idea. You know, why didn't someone else come up with that before? I can tell you how I came up with it, and it was a little bit of a circuitous route. So like Rachel mentioned, I started my career in human resources, and I started with Lowe's corporate headquarters. They're based here in North Carolina. And I was responsible for recruiting. I ran our internship program, and I ran our scholarship programs. And I loved Lowe's, great company to work for. And one of the best things about Lowe's was they had an excellent employee discount when I was there. So when my husband and I bought our first house together, you know, and I was it was a house that the only reason we could afford it was because it had a whole lot of work that needed done to it. So I started hiring people to do this work, and I started to get mad about what I was having to pay for people to do this work. And I started to watch them, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I could probably learn how to do some of this stuff. Why don't I take advantage of that employee discount and start buying some tools and giving it a try? So that's what I did. And just over the years, I picked up more and more things. Over the years, we remodeled a few more houses, and it sort of became a side hustle for me as I continued with my HR career. So I built my skills over the years, honestly, just by watching YouTube, by Googling things, by reading books, reading magazines. And something that was very annoying to them was following contractors around that I had doing work for me and asking them, show me how to do that, or, you know, tell me what you're doing there. After, you know, doing this for probably 10 years, it really started to bother me that I never saw any other women doing it. You know, I would meet with crews, I would have subcontractors do things, and none of them ever had women. But when I would talk to the male contractors that were running these crews, a lot of times they would say things like, you know, I would love to have a woman working for me. Women are so much better at details. The one woman I ever had working for me was the best employee I ever had. And so it kind of got the wheels turning for me. I left Lowe's. So there's a little cartoon of me becoming a self-taught tradeswoman. I left Lowe's and I went to IBM. And I did the same type of work at IBM, recruiting and training and workforce development primarily. After being with IBM for a number of years, I finally got to a point where it was nagging me enough that I needed to leave the corporate world. I realized that I really wanted to go to work for the community and stop putting my energy and my talents to work for a corporation's bottom line. I'd worked for great corporations, but I needed to do something different, and I needed to focus it on social justice and in particular, women's empowerment. So when I was with Lowe's and IBM, one of the things I was responsible for was recruiting more women into the organization. I was responsible for diversity recruiting in both jobs with a focus on women. So it was something that was close to my heart already. So I left IBM. And I went back to graduate school at UNC for a Master of Social Work. And while I was there, I really started putting the work behind figuring out how to make a training program for women happen. And at first I just thought, it'll just be a training program. It'll just be a vocational school and anybody can come and do it. But while I was in that graduate program, I did an internship at a homeless shelter, and I met a lot of women who were trying to get their lives back together, trying to address all of the barriers that they had to having a stable life. And one of them was employment. And a lot of these women were stuck in these low wage cycles of food service and cleaning, and they really never considered that they could do much better than that. So I would talk to them about jobs in the trades, knowing what I know about the good wages and about the great career opportunities. And by and large, there was excitement about that opportunity, but there was a huge block in place. And that was that these women did not know how to get from, yeah, I think I'd really be good at doing that, to, yeah, let me do that. When we are growing up, people don't talk to us as women about the trades the way they talk to boys about the trades. So it's not something, unless you have a dad or a brother or an uncle who's involved with the trades, it's not necessarily something that's part of your consciousness as a woman. So the wheels really started turning for me, and I realized my opportunity was to focus on unemployed, underemployed women and get them into these good jobs and fill that education gap so that they can have access to these opportunities. While I was in graduate school, my very last semester, I took a class in the business school that was focused on social entrepreneurship. And specifically, our task was to come up with an entrepreneurial venture that had an aging focus. I already had my idea for Hope Renovations at that time, although I hadn't named it yet. But I didn't think it necessarily was a fit for this class. I thought, I don't know how I could make a women's trades training program aging focused, until we started learning about the concept of aging in place. And that really hit home to me. I had watched my grandparents age very differently. So my grandfather spent his last couple of years in an assisted living facility, whereas my grandmother was able to stay in the home. And watching the last years of their lives that were so very different because of their surroundings really made a big impact on me in realizing how important it was for older adults to stay in their homes as they grow old. Not only that, but my husband's brother, my brother-in-law, had been diagnosed in his 40s with MS. And when he got into his 60s, he was no longer able to stay in his home, the home that he and my husband grew up in. It just wasn't safe for him anymore. And had he had the money or the resources to figure out how to make it an aging in place friendly home, he might have been able to stay there longer and been happier in his home for longer. So it occurred to me, it really was a light bulb moment. What if we put the two things together? What if we have a training program and then the on-the-job training that the women get while they're in a program? What if they're doing that for older adults who are wanting to age in place? So that's how I came up with the idea for Hope Renovations. Since starting Hope Renovations, I have become a licensed building contractor in North Carolina. I do have a certified aging in place specialist designation, as do a couple of other people on my team. So it really, once the idea kind of came together in that class in graduate school, it just sort of exploded from there, and it's been nonstop ever since. So I want to talk just a little bit about the concept of aging in place. And I know that, people are pretty familiar now with it. The term kind of came on the scene about 15 years ago. And a lot of research has been done into aging in place and why it's important and why people should be able to stay in their homes as they grow older. You can see from some of the statistics here, we're going to have a lot of older adults in this country. We already do, and it's going to go up exponentially over the next 15, 20 years. And that population wants to stay in their homes. AARP says that 95% of Americans want to stay in their homes as they grow older. The problem is that almost 70% of the homes that older adults have are over 30 years old. And it's about that 30-year mark where homes really start to need, some care to be able to, to still be safe for somebody. They need repairs at that point. There's things that need fixed. Your roof might need replaced. Not only that, but for older adults who are living in older homes, these homes were not built for aging in place. In fact, it's really just the last 10 years that people have been intentionally creating homes that are built for us as we go along the spectrum of life, and we can be comfortable there in our 30s, our 50s, our 70s, and on. So a lot of retrofitting has to happen for the homes that people treasure and love that they want to stay in. There's a lot of seniors also in this country who struggle to pay for their housing in the first place, and paying for the types of repairs and renovations that they need to be able to stay there comfortably can really be a barrier and really be a challenge as well. It is really, I think it's interesting that aging in place is the fastest growing segment of the residential remodeling industry. But the flip side of that is there's just not enough contractors doing this work. Most of the jobs that are aging in place focused are considered to be small to mid-sized jobs. So grab bars, switching out knobs on doors for lever doorknobs, and then up to wheelchair ramps or widening doorways so that wheelchairs can navigate them better. These are jobs that don't necessarily bring a lot of money to the contractors that are doing them. And in this environment where the building industry is just booming, it can be really hard to find somebody who can get you on their schedule. And if you already have an urgent situation, or you are struggling to be safe or be comfortable in your home, it's just going to get worse while you're waiting on a wait list for help. So these are some of the reasons that we have focused so closely in on this population and their specific needs. There are a lot of needs, and there's not enough people doing them. At the same time, we are, of course, focusing on women's needs in the workforce. So I don't think that many of these statistics will be very shocking to a lot of people. They never are, but it still, I think, is interesting to kind of go through them. And, most of these are from North Carolina, obviously, because we're located in North Carolina, but they're pretty universal. I would say that for most states in this country, these statistics are probably pretty similar. Throughout the country, the majority of low-wage jobs are held by women. In North Carolina, you can see that the average wage for women who are working in low-wage jobs is only about $9 an hour, which is nowhere close to what the living wage is, which, depending on the geography, is more close to about $15 an hour. One thing that's really interesting is that we've all heard these statistics about how COVID has disproportionately affected women. So many more women have lost their jobs because women tend to be in the industries where a lot of the job losses were, like hospitality, travel, education. The problem is that men's jobs that men have lost they're getting those jobs back at a lot quicker pace than women. So right now, at the pace we're going, at the pace we're getting our jobs back that we lost, it's going to take about 9 years for women to regain the jobs that they've lost due to the pandemic. At the same time, the job losses in the construction trades have been very low. It's one of the lowest industries for job losses due to COVID. But despite the fact that there are no women in this industry, only about 4%, which has been the same for decades, there is almost no gender pay gap in the construction trades. There shouldn't be any gender pay gap at all in anything, but construction has the smallest gender pay gap of any other industry. Now, a lot of the reason for that is because there aren't any women, and there have never been any women in this industry. But what that does is it offers an opportunity to women that they can't get in any other industry. They're coming into an industry where there is not already a implicit gender pay gap that they have to deal with. They're coming into an industry where their work is valued just as much as their male counterparts, which is really an opportunity for women. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our actual training program and how that works. So the ins and outs of what we do at Hope Renovations. Our program is considered a pre-apprenticeship program. So you're probably all familiar with what an apprenticeship is. A pre-apprenticeship is essentially a program that prepares somebody to go into that apprenticeship role if perhaps they don't have any relevant knowledge or any experience or any skills in that area. We teach a curriculum that was developed by the Home Builders Institute. It's a wonderful pre-apprenticeship curriculum that covers the basics and just about everything someone would need to know to step onto a job site and have a comfort level. So carpentry, electrical, plumbing, you know, there's even a little bit of appliance repair in there. There's some drywalling. Trainees get their hands dirty in pretty much everything. And then on top of that, there's a lot of teaching of safety, tools and materials, construction math, which is definitely not ever a crowd favorite, but very, very critical to being successful in this industry. And then at the end of the program, our graduates get their pre-apprenticeship certificate. They do receive OSHA 10 safety certification, which a lot of employers really like to see. And they get their first aid CPR certification as well while they're in our 10-week program. We, though, have really, we spend a lot of time on the other stuff that makes someone a successful employee. So when I first was talking to employers in this industry, when I was building Hope Renovations, a lot of the comments I got when I would ask about, you know, what are the needs? What are you looking for? What's hard to find? It's soft skills. It's, you know, people who know how to communicate, people who are good with clients, you know, people who can problem solve in the moment and, you know, don't necessarily need somebody to always be telling them what to do. So we spend a lot of time on these types of topics with our training program. And it's sort of one of the things that makes our curriculum unique. You know, we also spend a lot of time on career preparedness. So we have a mock interview day. We do a lot of resume building. We have some networking opportunities. We've got one tomorrow, as a matter of fact, that we're doing. And the whole point is, you know, when you are coming into an industry where you really haven't had a seat at the table, women really haven't had a seat at this table forever, you really do need to have a leg up coming in, and you need to be able to set yourself apart. And it's these types of things, these types of skills that allow women to do that in this industry. We spend a lot of time bringing in wonderful guest speakers. So we get as many people as we can, and as many women in particular as we can from the industry, to come in and talk about what their experiences are. We certainly don't want to give anybody in our training program the mistaken belief that their path is going to be easy, that they're going to be able to go into the trades and not have any issues, not have to deal with any comments, not have to deal with any attitudes from people who've been doing the same old status quo thing for a very long time. So we bring in these speakers, these experts who can talk about their path, who can talk about challenges that they've faced, and who can give advice on how to deal with those things. We also bring in someone that talks about harassment, what you're supposed to do in those situations. And we even have a group come in and they teach basic self-defense skills to the women in our program, because it's just good to have that. Most of the self-defense stuff centers around just like personal confidence and, you know, knowing how to say no. But there is a little bit of kicking and punching in there too, which is really fun to watch. I am a social worker, and I have 3 other people on my staff who are social workers. Our training program manager, our construction program manager, and our operations director, all social workers. So having that social work lens, we really don't just focus on here's a bunch of skills, go out and have a great career. We realized that for populations that are underserved, that are marginalized, there's a lot more to being successful in employment than just giving them the skills. Otherwise, if someone just went to community college and learned how to do something, their life should be perfect, right? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. And particularly for women who typically bear the burden of childcare, of caregiving in general. If they come from a low income background, sometimes there's transportation issues. The women who come to our program have a number of different barriers that we help with. So as social workers, we really spend a lot of time basically connecting them to resources, talking with them about how to resolve these barriers so that when they get done with our training program, they're going to be able to go out into the working world as prepared as possible so that they can really build their career without this stuff in place to hold them back. The purpose of our program, of course, is to land an entry-level job in the trades, to go into an apprenticeship in the trades, or to go into further education. So we have a number of community colleges in our area that we work really closely with, and a lot of women choose to come out of our program and they love learning about this stuff so much, but they want more. So they'll go into further education to become like a licensed plumber or a licensed electrician, or we've had some women sign up for the heavy machinery course at a local community college. Welding, there's a lot of, our goal and our purpose is to get women thinking about where their fit might be, and then launch them into figuring that fit out. So that's how we do that. We have a lot of great partners. One of the weird silver linings of COVID has been just endless job opportunities in this industry. So, employers typically are knocking down our doors, and we have more employers and more jobs available than we have women coming through our program. But it's a good time to be a training program for this industry right now. And it's something that has helped us a lot over the last 16 months as we've launched and then continued our growth. So now let's talk a little bit about the construction program. You can see here Kat and Kate, they both run our crews and they're fantastic. We do a lot of different things with our construction program. Some of the things that you see listed here are kind of our most common tasks that we do in terms of aging in place. We do a lot of bathroom renovations. Obviously, one of the least safe places for older adults is the bathroom. There's just a lot of opportunity to slip and fall when you're getting out of the tub, when you're trying to get up and down off of the toilet. So we do a lot of work in bathrooms to make those spaces safer. We also, we do a lot of ramps. We do a lot of just urgent repairs, particularly for low income older adults. A lot of times they will, let things go longer than they should because they don't have the money to be able to fix them. And so that's where we come in and we help them with this work. Our work is all done on a sliding scale. So what that means is we actually generate revenue with some of our work. We will go out and do work for an older adult in the nicest house in town, and we will charge them market prices for our work. And then we take the revenue that we generate from that work, we put that back into our program to help pay for the work that we do for low income older adults who could not otherwise afford it. So in that way, the older adults who hire us to do this work know that they are actually helping their fellow seniors who are low income live healthy and more safely in their homes by hiring us to do this. The majority of homeowners that we do work for that are on the low income end of the scale, it is urgent repairs. Some of it is extremely urgent. We've repaired human-sized holes in floors because people have fallen through them because they're so rotten. We have worked with homeowners who are living in very bad conditions with mold, with no HVAC in the summer or in the winter time. It's amazing that in the 21st century people can live in some of the conditions that they do, but they do, and especially sometimes older adults. So having that opportunity to give back to their fellow older adults is something that I think a lot of our clients really treasure. And at the same time, because it's an opportunity also for our trainees to go out with our crews and learn, they're also giving back to underemployed women in the community who want to re-career, who want to have this great career opportunity. So, sometimes we'll bring our whole group of trainees out with us. We had them out on the job site today. We were building some raised beds for somebody so that they can more easily garden. So our trainees are out there with us building the raised beds. Sometimes we'll just bring them out one by one, like you can see in this photo here, if they have a particular interest in learning how to tile or learning how to do plumbing or switching out electrical fixtures. We'll bring them out one or two at a time, but we like having that opportunity to bring the two together, and the trainees really like the opportunity to get their hands dirty while they're giving back to their community in this way. Just a few cool pictures, just because I think that it is very empowering to look at women holding power tools and doing this stuff. So here you go. Here's some pictures of my awesome crew doing their work. We have completed, as of the end of this week, we will have completed 100 jobs in the community since we launched in June of 2020, which is pretty incredible for being that new. A couple of really cool things that we're doing too. We're starting to branch out a little bit and try some new things. So we're actually getting ready to start work on a tiny home. It'll be our first new construction. We're working with an affordable housing developer in our area to build a tiny home for an underserved family. And we're also contracting right now with another nonprofit to build another tiny home. They're a nonprofit that works with adults with severe mental illness, and they're specifically looking for help building some housing for seniors and for veterans. So we're doing some kind of cool new things that still fit very much within our mission, and we're really excited about it and excited about the opportunity to bring our trainees out on the site and do this kind of stuff with them. Just a few stats for you about some of the stuff we have been able to do in 16 months. So we're in cohort number 5 right now in the training program. As of November 17th, we will have graduated 31 women out of our program. 50% of those have been women of color, and the age range is very wide. As you can see there, our youngest person was 20 and our oldest person was 62. And some of the stories of these women that come through our program are just so inspiring. We've had women who had an entire career and then were laid off and were trying to figure out what their next step is and decided that this was it. Women who were going through a divorce and on paper did not look underserved at all, but didn't have any access to her assets and had to figure out, where do I go from here? How do I support myself? When we've had women come through who were in that low-wage job cycle that I talked about earlier and just were ready to get out of it. In fact, we've hired 2 women out of the program onto our own construction crew, and both of them sort of fit in that cycle until they found Hope Renovations, and now they're working for us and doing this work out in the community. Of our graduates so far, we've had 15 go into jobs, although I did find out today that one of our current trainees just got a job offer. So that is actually 16 as of today. We've had 12 different employers in the area hire them, and quite a few, interestingly, have wanted to go into entrepreneurship in the trades and figure out how to hang out their own shingle, which is really cool. And then, like I mentioned, we're at about 100 jobs in the community. We've helped 72 older adults stay in their homes more safely as they age. And the large majority of our clients that have received this work have been low income folks. So again, the folks that are on the higher incomes end of the scale are really helping to contribute to that work that we're able to do for those people. Just wanted to share a little about our vision for change. So year one's in the books. We were able to complete all the things on that list. We're in year two now, but we've already checked off a couple of things on this list. So we're already hosting some DIY workshops for women in our community, which have been a great success. 50 construction jobs, we're way over that for the year. I think we're at maybe 80 almost, or 75. We'll be on track to train 70 women this year. And we're actually in 2022, we're going to start offering some specific trades classes. So we're going to be doing a carpentry specific class and an electrical specific class. Year three, we want to go outside of our region. So the region that we're in is called the Triangle region of North Carolina. It's Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. We want to expand outside of that. We want to scale our construction work outside of the Triangle as well, so that in the future, we can go outside of North Carolina. I see Hope Renovations as being out all over the country. That's my ideal and my hope. You know, I intentionally created Hope Renovations to be very replicable and very scalable, because this need is a need that's everywhere. It doesn't matter what state you're in. There are women that need living wage jobs. The construction industry needs more people doing the work. Older adults are aging in place and need people doing this work for them so that they can live in their homes their whole lives, everywhere. So you really could pick up Hope Renovations, set it somewhere else, and it could be a success. And that's what we're working towards. But we're still new. But you can follow us on hoperenovations.org. You can follow us on our newsletter. You can follow us on social media. We're very active on social media. Again, if you like looking at pictures of awesome women doing awesome things with power tools, definitely check out our social media and follow along, and keep up with us. We're gonna, I think, experience a whole lot of growth over the next few years, and you know, who knows where this thing is going to take us. We're very, very excited to be doing this work.
Thank you, Nora. That was awesome. I was saying before we started this presentation that I poured over their website when I found it, and it's always so powerful to hear the story spoken by the person who started it. And as I shared with you, Nora, when we were first getting this set up and scheduled, I find this extra important because of my own experience caring for my dad when he was dying from ALS. And it was so challenging to get support to build a ramp to get into his house. All of the doorways were super narrow and really hard to maneuver his transfer chair through. And we ended up having to carry him up and down the stairs because we couldn't find someone to build a ramp. So, you know, imagining how different that experience would have been if we did have access to something like that is just mind-blowing. And thank you. Thank you for doing this and for sharing it.
Yeah, of course. And we hear that all the time. You know, I was just at a homeowner's house today. We had done a tub to shower conversion for her because she had had a stroke, and she had lost much of the control of her left side of her body. So she could get into her tub, but she couldn't get back out of her tub anymore. You know, and just, you don't realize how it's not just about staying in your home. It's about staying in your home independently. And that's what this type of work allows people to do, is stay in their homes independently as they grow older and as their needs change.
Yeah, that's awesome. We did have one question from Pova asking how you determine what clients pay on the sliding scale.
That's a great question. So we base it on our area median income. So if someone is a certain percentage of the area median income, they pay a certain percentage of the cost. And, you know, if someone is above that area median income, then they pay, you know, regular market prices. Our area median income here is quite high because we are in a really highly educated area, and there's a lot of universities around us. So there's a lot of good, well-paying jobs. So what that does is it allows us to do work for almost everybody gets some kind of discount because our area median income is so high. And then at a certain level on that scale, we don't expect people to pay at all. Now, I will say, we are, as I mentioned, a very new nonprofit, and we're still, trying to work on our own sustainability. So we are pretty limited with the jobs that we can do completely for free. Like, we wouldn't have the resources or the capacity to do a whole house remodel for somebody for free. But, we might be able to come out and certainly do things like install grab bars and small fixes, and potentially, if we can get some support from some of our partners, we can do ramps, we can do, larger jobs, tub to shower conversions, that kind of thing. But, I think one of the things that is pretty frustrating in housing for nonprofits and housing related nonprofits is that a lot of the funding that we typically use for lower income folks is government funding or HUD funding. And there's so much red tape and so much bureaucracy wrapped around that funding that it can be really difficult to actually use it for the people who need it, especially if they need it urgently. You pretty much know that if you're going to try to rely on government-based funding, you're waiting 6 months, a year, 2 years sometimes. We want to be able to fill that gap and to help people immediately. And that's what our revenue generating model allows us to do.
Awesome. Tova has a follow-up question, actually. They ask if they give you their tax return, or if it's like, is it a self-shared?
We do ask for documentation of household income. We don't ask for tax returns or anything like that. We just basically have a form that they fill out. It's kind of, it's kind of honor system, but typically, we don't find that people, are really trying to pull one over on us. They know that we're doing this work for our mission, and they understand that. So we just ask for household income. I think over the last 2 or 3 months, so that we can determine where they fit on that scale.
Awesome. And then Casey, who was our speaker last week, said thank you, first of all. This is amazing and such impactful work. And her question is, how do clients find you, and how do you find clients? For example, have you partnered with community organizations that serve low-income senior populations or something similar?
Yes. So on the higher end of the sliding scale, all of that's word of mouth. We've never had to advertise. People find out about us, they call us. We have more work than we can get to. We have a pretty long waiting list right now for the full pay jobs, as we call them. For the low income folks, we are a member of a couple of different local community coalitions. So there's one called the Family Success Alliance that's in our area. We also have a coalition that specifically is made up by groups that do this kind of work. So we're on that coalition, Habitat for Humanity, Rebuilding Together. Those are 2 other nonprofits that do a lot of this type of work. And we meet once a month to talk through, who has applied, who's sitting on the wait list, what kind of jobs can each of these organizations take. So that's that plus referrals. We just have an open referral process. That's really the way that we connect with low-income homeowners. And again, a lot of word of mouth. The job site I was at today, she found out about us from her neighbor who had us do some stuff for her. So the word is getting out, spreading like wildfire in just 16 short months.
Yeah, you're going to have to expand soon to keep up with demand. Someone else asked, have you done or might you do focused training on weatherization, or is that more integrated into the work? For example, you mentioned mold.
Right, that's a great question. We do touch on it. So our curriculum is a building construction technologies curriculum, which essentially is like a maintenance curriculum. So there's a little bit of weatherization that's part of that. However, we are licensed to teach a weatherization module just by itself. We just haven't yet, as we've been getting started up. We do intend to do that though down the line. There are a number of modules that we can teach. There's green building as a module that we're going to be able to teach. The specific trades, as long as we have the right instructor in place, we can teach plumbing, we can teach electrical, we can teach HVAC. So we do touch on it lightly just to get people an understanding of what that is. And we actually have some guest speakers that come in and talk about weatherization and what that looks like, and green building and, solar energy and that sort of thing. But we are not teaching that specific course right now. Check back with me in a couple of years and I'm sure the answer will be yes.
Awesome. Tova again says, this is great. We've been talking about replicating something like this in New England. We should talk. So I'm going to ask, how can people do what you're doing where they are?
That's a great question. So, and it's interesting. We were featured on CBS this morning, which of course was a national broadcast on Christmas Eve last year. And there were a lot of cool things that came out of that. But I think the coolest thing was we had people, primarily women, all over the US texting us and calling us and emailing us and saying, how do we bring Hope Renovations to Alaska? How do we bring Hope Renovations to New Mexico, to Vermont, so it really started that conversation for us. We held a couple of webinars about how we got started and how one would start it up. And there's actually a couple of women, there's one in Pennsylvania and one in Tennessee, who have taken that to heart, and they're actually starting this very same model where they live. We don't have, it's not franchised or anything, and nobody has a copyright on great ideas. So we are very much supportive of anybody that wants to take this and create it where they are, as long as you don't call it Hope Renovations. I am happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to go down that route. It's the two pieces of advice I would give anyone are, however long you think it's going to take, triple it. And also, if you have a day job and you're creating this while you're doing your day job, maybe quadruple or, just times it by 10, because, one thing that I was very fortunate about is my partner, my husband, he has a good job. So I was able to, step away from work for a couple of years to get Hope Renovations off the ground. If I had not been able to do that, it would have taken much, much longer to make this happen. There's a lot of relationships you have to build. There's a lot of moving pieces. And it's all worth it in the end, but there's a lot of pre-legwork that you have to do before you can get launched. Not to discourage anybody. I would tell anybody that wants to do it, contact me and let's talk about how to make it happen where you are.
I think you're going to be getting an email from Tova. If anyone else has questions, definitely put them in the chat or the Q&A right now. We still have a few minutes before we hit the 8 o'clock mark, if you're tuning in from the East Coast. I think it's such a brilliant idea, and it's something that, like I was saying earlier, it just makes sense when you think about it. And Yestermore has like a similar model in some ways of reducing the cost of, for example, building a tiny house by, not charging for labor and not charging like a huge markup on materials and things like that. And, I know that here we're constantly exploring avenues to have greater impact with the projects that our classes are working on. And so I think this is also going to be quite inspiring for the folks here too, to see other ways or other very specific avenues of being able to support people in our community, and, have a little bit more equity with how who we're serving and how we're bringing our mission forward to more people.
Right. Absolutely.
And I don't know who this is tuning in. I think it might be Britton, the executive director. It just says, from Yestermore Design Build School. It is Britton. Very inspiring indeed. Hi, Britton. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, it's, I think solving one problem is great, but solving multiple problems at the same time just makes a lot of sense. I certainly looked for something like Hope Renovations when I was deciding this is what I wanted to do, and it did not exist. So I had to create it. But I think, the more people that are like-minded in that, and broadening missions, and ensuring that missions are helping as many people as possible in a very intentional way. I think, that's how we're really going to bring about change.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Aha. This one's from Joanne, from my mom. And she says, in my area, it's really difficult to find tradespeople do the small job of installing grab bars. And she's very impressed with Hope Renovations.
Well, thank you. Yes. And it's the same here. It's the same everywhere. That's everyone's experience, because, why would you travel to someone's home and then spend the 30 minutes to an hour installing the grab bar? And, it doesn't make people enough money unless it's part of a bigger project. So that's definitely a gap that, we need more Hope Renovations out there in the world to fill.
Absolutely.
And just finding tradespeople in general right now, I mean, it's crazy. We struggle to find, we're trying to hire right now, and just like everybody else, it's hard. It's just too hard to find tradespeople right now.
And it kind of, especially as more people in the last year and a half were at home and being like, I don't want a stranger coming into my house to work on this. Let me see if I can figure it out. I feel like there has been a huge resurgence of people, being open to exploring what they can do, and hopefully knowing when it's beyond their skill level.
Pro, yeah, that's definitely an important question to ask yourself before it gets too late. We have a woman in our current cohort who came to us from a real estate background, and she really didn't know what she wanted to do with the program. She just wanted to, figure out if there was a path for her. Did not consider necessarily leaving real estate, but now she's interviewing for a couple of jobs with a couple of construction companies. So I think you're right. I think COVID has really changed the way people think about work, and the way that people think about their futures and their career paths. And I think it's an interesting time where people are kind of reassessing what's important to them and what they want to do.
Yeah. And I think there's something too about like there's the fragility of certain systems of our society has come into very stark lighting. And I think that, I know for me and for other people in my circles, it's like, okay, so how do I learn how to do these things, make these things that might not be available at some point again in the future? And so it's kind of, I feel like there's a collective desire to like skill up in all these different ways. And also like, to be able to make that shift in a career that also in the process of making that shift gets to help other people is pretty amazing. So again, very impressed and grateful that Hope Renovations exists and that y'all are growing and inspiring people all over the country. That's incredible, especially for 16 months during a pandemic. Like bravo.
Sometimes it's just, there are days where I'm just like, what was I thinking? But it never lasts very long.
I imagine like starting it during a pandemic might be a little better than right before a pandemic.
Well, I tell everybody, everyone's like, well, soon we'll be back to normal. And I say, we don't know what that's like. We've only ever existed in a pandemic. So
yeah,
really it's going to be better after this.
Yeah, so. Got like a leg up with other organizations. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nora. I'm so happy that we were able to share your story with the SMR community. And I imagine that, you have more supporters now in all other parts of the country. I know we have folks tuning in from Vermont, to folks tuning in from California. So as a word of Hope Renovations is going to just continue to spread, and hopefully more things like it will pop up.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really grateful to be able to share our story and to get some more engagement out there in the world. The only way we'll be able to, change the way things are is for more people to advocate for it. So thanks for the opportunity.
Course, and that officially marks the end of this fall speaker series. So thank you again, everyone who tuned in throughout the whole series, all of our speakers. This was a really incredible topic to be able to curate a series around, and we'll see you in the springtime for the next series. Have a good night. Bye.
Yeah, bye.